Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the TCT podcast here on YouTube. My name is Gavin Campbell. Alongside me, as always, that's Tyson Snyder. That's Cale Fleming. On today's rundown, we got MLB free agency, and that's all we got because, let's be honest, this is going to take a while, guys. We've spent the last two episodes talking about AFC predictions in the NFL, NFC predictions in the NFL, so we're going to take a break from football because we've been neglecting the MLB for a little bit, about a week and a half, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. First things first, guys. Zach Britton, this was a guy that we thought might end up going to the Chicago Cubs, ended up being traded to the New York Yankees from the Orioles, 16 games, 3.45 ERA. What do you guys think about this move?
The Cubs were in the forefront for him for what, 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah.
They were about to finalize a deal, and all of a sudden, the New York Yankees come out of nowhere and snag him. It's horrible for the Cubs, for the fact, too, that we didn't get a solid middle reliever, which is kind of what we need in our bullpen. We needed just a little more strength. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I feel like we don't have enough bullpen pitching as of right now. With Cishek, Dunsing, he was injured. He was on the 10-day DL. C.J. Edwards, he could step it up a little bit, even though last night he did come through and get us out of a pretty big inning. So, I don't know. Losing Britton to me kind of hurts, especially with a guy in 16 games, as Gavin says. He's got a 3.4 ERA. Out of the bullpen, that's pretty decent. It's about average. But he's only allowed 10 walks this year with 1 long ball. So that's saying something right there. He's a ground ball pitcher. That's what the Cubs organization has been based on, is ground ball pitching. They would rather get outs on the ground, turn double plays, and get long outs out in the air, which is kind of, old school baseball. You would rather get outs on the ground. But I don't know, losing the deal with Britton, it hurt a little bit, the bullpen, but not necessarily because we still got a decent bullpen. I just like to get Britton in there to beef it up a little bit.
Yeah, once again, it kind of sucked not getting Britton, but then again, it wasn't really something. If we got him, it would have been nice. Not having him, like Cale said, we've already got a decent bullpen. It's not the end of the world. It kind of upsets me that New York, the Yankees, kind of swooped in and picked him up. But he doesn't really have a very big sample size this year from what we've seen from the Orioles. So I don't know why he was such a hot prospect. I mean, he's a good pitcher. He's a decent reliever. But he was, I don't know. I hadn't seen enough so far from him this year. In a quarter of his appearances, he got a save out of it. So that's good, but it's not great. But to see him go to the Yankees kind of sucks because they made a lot of moves before the trade deadline here, and it's going to be scary to see where the Yankees go from here.
So going off of that, do you think that since we haven't seen the sample size with the Orioles, basically because we live in Illinois, we're not going to really care about what goes on out there, especially since they're in the wrong division. They're so bad, honestly, that he just kind of just gave up. He didn't really care because his only offense was obviously Manny Machado, and they couldn't even win games with Manny. They have one of the worst records, or the worst record in the MLB. They're 40 games out of first place, 41 and a half. So do you feel like, honestly, that was something that was a big deal, that he just kind of didn't care, didn't want to pitch or whatever for the Baltimore Orioles anymore?
Well, I think that was a big part of it. You just said the Orioles are 41 and a half games out of first place in their division. So there's really no need for him to come in and have 32 appearances throughout the first half of the season. So I think that's why he doesn't have that very large sample size to look at so far this year, just because there's no point in wearing himself out for a team that isn't really going to take him anywhere. I do think that's why he's got a small sample size so far this year. But that being said, I still don't really get. He's a good pitcher, but he was the number one guy that guys were going after for a couple weeks there. Even though he had this small sample size, I know teams know what he can do, but you think they would go after guys that had a little bit more to look at from this year alone, besides what they've done in the past.
Let's go ahead and move on here, guys. Sticking with the New York Yankees, my guy from the Toronto Blue Jays, Jay Happ. Unfortunately, he was traded to an in-division rival, but that's a story for a different day from me. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you guys. 10-6 in his 20 games, 4.18 ERA. This is one of my favorite guys on the Jays other than Stroman and Donaldson. What do you guys think about this move?
This is a bad move for the Jays. They got a lot out of it. They got some cash next year for the salary cap, so hopefully they can flip the rebuild switch like I told you they needed to do, even though you disagree with me. They needed to do that a long time ago. Now with J Happ out of their rotation, they really need to do it. They need to beef up their starting pitching. They need to beef up their position players. They need to beef up everything and anything they can think of. Well, getting a large lump sum of cash for J Happ is a good start. So now they can beef up their salary caps for guys like Donaldson, guys like Stroman, who are obviously going to be in Toronto for a while, and they're going to have to probably put up with the rebuild process. So they're going to want paid a little bit, but they don't need to get paid so much that they interfere with the rebuild process. But J Happ, 20 games, he's 10-6, so he's got 4 no decisions on the year, 4.1 ERA. That's a little on the high side, but it's about league average. But in my opinion, I think J Happ is a superstar, so I'd like to see his ERA in there with a guy like DeGrom. Through the month of July, he's throwing like a .4 or something like that, something super low, super nasty low. And 114 innings pitched total. He's got 53 earned runs, 35 walks, and 130 Ks. He's actually got a pretty decent whip, 1.175 walks hits per innings pitched. That's not bad. The thing that I'm hung up on, though, with a guy like J Happ is the 53 earned runs. That's a lot. Earned runs is what kills your ERA, obviously, because it's your average. But somebody that's been in the league a while, has been around the block a few times, to have 53 earned runs in one season, that's a lot of earned runs. And going to New York, who's actually, believe it or not, kind of riding the struggle train right now. Obviously, because they have Boston, that doesn't help them at all in their division. But even though they're still struggling in that ALed league out there, it's just the AL's not near as competitive as the National League is, which is something Tyson and I have been raving about all season. But I just don't know if they're going to have enough mustard or enough gas in the tank to make a playoff run. So, but getting Happ, who does have playoff experience, who can give you some solid innings, along with Severino, CC Sabathia. They got a pretty nasty pitching lineup, but it just seems like they keep getting ripped and hit all year. So I don't know. That's just me. I'd like to see what Happ does. I have to look a little more into him, see what he's going to do this season, the rest of the season, and see if they're actually going to re-sign him. Because the Yankees, this is the lowest payroll the Yankees have had since 2003. Keep that in mind. 2003 they had Johnny Damon, Andy Pettit, Mark Teixeira. They had a lot of guys who they made a solid playoff run in 2003, and they didn't win the World Series in 2003. I don't believe. I can't remember who did, but. This is the third lowest payroll, and that's saying something for the New York Yankees because usually they blow everybody out of the water in payroll. But that just means for next season, they got a lot of guys they need to sign. They need to keep around with big paychecks, and I know a couple of them guys that I don't care for are going to get paid. So,
I think this was a huge pickup for the Yankees. J Happ, he's a guy that played on one of the top, the lowest 10 teams in baseball. They definitely weren't the worst team, but they weren't anywhere close to middle run of the pack teams this year. So getting J Happ in a team that was well below average, who went 10-6, I think that shows something about J Happ. I think he brings a certain energy to the lineup when he pitches. Teams the players, the coaches, they know that they've got a good shot when he's on the mound. Whether he lets up 3 earned runs, whether he lets up 6 earned runs, or whether he keeps it scoreless through 6 or 7 that he's going to pitch. I think he brings a certain energy to the ballpark on the day that he's throwing. And I think that's why the 53 earned runs doesn't scare a lot of people. Yeah, that's a lot, especially for a seasoned vet that knows what he's doing for a year, let alone half a year. But I think that's why teams aren't really scared off from him, because somehow he still finds a way to win games. He's 10-6 on a bad team. That's saying something. So I think it was a great pick for New York. Like you said, it's not the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, yeah, they're in a tough spot right now. They had some good guys, but they really need to start that rebuild process. They needed to start it after the first quarter of the first half of the season. They need to continue to dump off guys that they don't need, guys that they're paying too much, and they need to start from square one. It's going to suck, especially for those younger guys that do have some talent, but they're all going to have to kind of fit in with this rebuild process and go along with it for the next couple years to see if they can get back to where they have been playing, get back to the old Blue Jays.
One last thing before we move on here to the next guy. I want to ask you guys are talking about a rebuild for Toronto here. What do they do with their contract situation with Tulowitzki, with Donaldson, with Pilar, and these guys that are borderline all-stars have been all-stars in the past, and they're a mix of young talent in their system and guys that are on the team already. What do they do going forward to really compete in their division? I know you guys are talking rebuild, but is there anything that they can do moving forward to compete with Boston, New York, after trading off, J-Hap to an in-division rival?
The only thing I see him doing, and this would be the smart thing for Toronto to do, would be to keep one guy, Josh Donaldson, as a player position in the outfield, and another guy by the name of Stroman. Those are the only two guys that I see staying with the Toronto Blue Jays during this rebuild process. Being Troy Tulowitzki's getting up there in age. He's been around since I've been in, junior high, so 5th grade to junior high. He's getting old. And not only is he getting old, he plays shortstop. You can't really have a shortstop out there in your 30s unless your name's Derek Jeter and perform. Because, honestly, shortstop's a young man's game. We're seeing that with guys like Carlos Carrera, 21, 22 years of age, Addison Russell, Javi Baez, Nolan Arenado can play short. Machado's young. So, therefore, you got all these young guys. Shortstop is a young man's position. Seager, who's out on Tommy John surgery this season. So, shortstop is obviously a young man's position because that is, honestly, without a doubt, in my head, the most athletic position on the field because they have such a big hole to cover. So, you get rid of Tulowitzki, but you keep Donaldson and Stroman. Stroman's going to be your ace next season. And not only that, they got one guy down in AAA that I still don't understand why he's down in AAA other than it's going to be a contract issue if they bring him up this year. And that is a guy by the name of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That dude can absolutely hit the ball. I mean, he can hit at 500 feet. And he's like 22, 23. His dad just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. He played in the 90s during the steroid era, which is something I'm going to talk about in a little while. But Vlad Guerrero is going to be your staple. That is going to be your poster child. He's going to be on billboards when you're walking around Toronto with Kawhi Leonard. So the Blue Jays have to rebuild around Vlad Guerrero and Donaldson because Donaldson's still fairly young. Stroman's going to be a solid pitcher for the next 3 to 4 years. So there's your rebuild pieces right there. You got Vlad Guerrero Jr. and you've got Josh Donaldson. So that's the only thing I'm going to say about it, other than they seriously need to consider some options on this rebuild.
As far as competing in the AL East while they're going through this rebuild process, I don't really see it. I think you can expect a few more bad years from the Blue Jays. Maybe not awful, maybe not okay, but I think they'll have a couple more bad years just because there's no point if you're rebuilding to go out and sign other pieces to come and try and help. That just takes up money that you want to save so you can sign younger, better players for longer contracts instead of having these older players come in just to help you get a couple cheap wins. So as far as competing in the AL, especially the AL East, I don't think they'll be up there with Boston and New York for the next couple of years until they finish up with this rebuild. So to answer your question, Gav, what can they do? All they can do is keep with that rebuild. Like Cale said, center around Vlad Guerrero Jr., Josh Donaldson, and Stroman, and work on building up pieces around them. Get where you can with them, and then whatever comes after is what comes after. But in the next couple of years, focus on those guys and help try and put some pieces around them rather than putting some pieces around now. Give it a couple of years, build what you got, use your farm system, use your draft picks, get to where you need to be in a few years rather than try and struggle to get there now.
Is Pilar a player that you keep on this team moving forward?
Personally,
we've seen Kevin make outstanding catches in left field before. We've seen him rob guys of home runs. We've seen how athletic he is when he climbs the wall. Is this a guy that you see in the future of the Jays moving forward?
He is a stud. There's no doubt about it. But here's the thing. If you're going to rebuild, you need guys like him to help you rebuild. You need guys like PR to get minor leaguers, to get guys that are in AAA, top prospects, top-tier pitching, top-tier shortstops, first baseman, what have you. You need guys like that. Now, am I knocking him as a player? Absolutely not. I'm just going off of the fact that the Blue Jays need to do something here because this is what they've got to face in the next probably 5 to 6 years. They've got a guy by the name of Luis Severino, another guy by the name of Marashino Tanaka. I can't pronounce his first name. I think that's pretty close. Yeah, that's it. CC Sabathia, Sonny Gray, now J-Hap. That is what they had to contend with. And that's not even counting the Boston Red Sox starting pitching with Chris Sale and David Price. So that is what they have to battle with. That's just in their division, let alone Houston, Cleveland, who's
Oakland now.
So that's what they have to contend with. That is why I feel like they need to flip this rebuild and use PR Kevin to, kind of get some top tier talent that's younger. Even though he's not necessarily old, 25, 26, 27 is not that old for an outfielder, because them guys can typically go a little longer than infielders can. But he can still hit the ball. He can still make phenomenal plays. I'm not knocking him as a player. I'm knocking the Blue Jays organization for what they need to do. Now, I'm not their GM. I can't sit here and say, well, they need to do this, this, and this, and then what they're going to do and what I'm going to tell them to do is going to be completely opposite, because I don't know the game of baseball like these guys do. So I don't know, man. When it comes to PR, I just feel like he needs to go just for that younger talent.
I was going to say the same thing. To answer that question, Kevin PR is not a guy that I see after the next couple of years when they get towards the end of that rebuild. I think they'll continue to use him for the next couple of years. He's a great piece to have while they're going through this rebuild. He's one of those guys that can help them get a few wins during this process. But at the end of his contract, there's no point to re-sign him if you're rebuilding. He's going to want a lot more money than they could pay one of these younger guys to come out and do the same stuff. So I think they'll use him until they no longer have a purpose for him, until they find someone to replace him with, or until his contract is up. And then they'll just replace him with who they've got. So I think he'll be a good part of the Blue Jays for the next couple of years. But to answer the question, no, I don't see him on the Blue Jays roster much longer than the next couple of years when his contract is up.
All right, guys, let's move on here. Aaron Judge, he's on the DL with a right wrist fracture. We're unsure how many games as of this point, but this is the Yankees' ace, and with him out, like you said, Cale, they're moving towards being on the struggle bus here. How do you see them moving or faring moving forward?
Everything I read this morning, Aaron Judge, for those of you who don't know, broke his wrist, fractured his wrist, I should say, the other day. It was about 3 days ago. So he's been on the DL. Everybody's saying he could be out to 3 to 6 weeks. He's 24 years old. You fracture your wrist. We're young. We can heal pretty quick. Especially these guys, these top-tier athletes who take care of themselves, religiously, and this is what they do for a living. So that being said, with Judge being out, they're losing one of their top sluggers. Their second one being obviously Giancarlo Stanton. But, if he can't swing a bat for the next 3 to 6 weeks, that just puts the Yankees farther in this hole. And as we talked about off air, they have literally just fixed all of their bullpen and all of their starting pitching problems. So yes, they've got that issue figured out. Now they've got another issue. They've got their best hitter this season, and he's going to be their best hitter for a long time to come, out on the DL with a fractured wrist. Now, everybody's got him listed on the 3 to 6 week DL, but there are reports coming out saying that he is possibly going to pick up a bat and start doing some light swinging off a tee as early as Saturday. Now, I got a question for you, Tyson. Do you want your star player, who's 24 years of age, 23 years of age, with a fractured wrist on his bottom hand, which is the dominant hand controlling his bat, do you want him swinging a bat a week into a fractured wrist, even if it is off a tee?
I don't want him swinging a bat until he says he's ready to go. And now, until his trainers say he's ready to go. Until he can move that wrist, there's no pain, there's no struggle in moving it, using it for everyday function. He's swinging at a ball off a tee. It's not going to put a whole lot of pressure on his wrist or on his hands. Just swinging at a ball, because there's no velocity coming at the bat. It's not going to make anything vibrate or do too much to it. So that's the one thing that I can understand about this, is just it keeps him in that motion, keeps his strength up. But this guy is going to be their all-star for the next several coming years. The one dude that we know every time he comes up to the plate, he's got a damn good shot at putting it out of the park. So I don't want this guy swinging the bat at all until his trainers and the team doctors say that he's ready to play again. Maybe a day or two before that, so he can get a couple practice swings in, get back to where he was. But for a young guy like this, he'll heal quicker, even if he does hurt it again swinging. But why take that chance? Why risk? Why risk having him get hurt worse than he already is.
You got to remember, as Yankees fans, which there's probably a few around here. Well, let's be honest, there's probably no Yankees fans around here. But anyway,
no real Yankees fans.
So they still got Stanton. They still got Aaron Hicks. They still got Greg Bird, Neil Walker, Gleyber Torres, Didi. They've got all of these pieces, but Aaron Judge is still the one that sticks out. And that's sad because they've got Giancarlo Stanton. But since Giancarlo Stanton has signed with the Bronx Bombers, he hasn't done anything. He had, what did he have, 15 games? He had, he was over 5, 15 games straight or something like that. He had a terrible
start the season. He
terrible first start.
Had, 1 hit in the first 20 games.
That's unreal to think about Giancarlo Stanton's not putting balls out of the park. So that's, I don't know. Aaron Judge is the most consistent hitter they have, most consistent home run hitter. You saw it in the All-Star game because the first pitch you saw off of who started? I can't even remember. Oh, wow. But no, the first pitch he saw of the All-Star game, he put it over the fence. So that's saying something right there. You're losing your key guy to your offense right in front of Gleyber Torres and Greg Bird. That's in my opinion because they're the most 2 consistent guys right behind Aaron Judge.
Well, and let's not forget Stanton coming from the Marlins, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you're hitting in Florida, and now you're hitting in New York. I mean, the weather's obviously different. I'm sure that he's got more pressure on him now that he plays for the Yankees, and he's not the star of the Marlins and whatever dumpster fire they're dealing with right now down in Florida. But, yeah, no, I definitely agree with you guys that Judge is, with him being out, he is, like I said, he's their ace. And without him, they're definitely going to be looking to someone else to step up. Now, if Stanton can be that guy, it's not looking like it will be, but maybe these guys can band together and not catch Boston because I think at this point that's out of the equation. But they could definitely hold on to that. I mean, they'll definitely hold on to that 4 seed in the wild card.
Going off of what you said, that's it right there.
Yeah,
they're not going to catch Boston. Boston's running away with the AL. They are going to be able to stay on top of this wild card, like you said. If Stanton, it's got to be Stanton. It can't be anybody else. Stanton's the leader on that team, that right behind Aaron Judge. It has to be Giancarlo Stanton that picks up the slack for these next 3 to 6 weeks if he's out. And then you got Gleyber Torres who's going to follow you. So them 2 guys right there, they have to stay consistent. They have to stay hot. Giancarlo's got to be Giancarlo. That's just the way it has to be.
Well, let me say this: if the Yankees play this the right way, which they should keep him out for 5 to 6 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Because if they don't, I mean, they're fools for doing so.
Yes.
Keep your ace safe, like Tyson said. You want him healthy, and when he comes back, you'll be ready. Because I mean, Seattle's not going to catch you. Oakland's not going to catch you. You're safe. You're safe where you're at in the 4 spot right now. So get your guy healthy. Get ready for the wild card game. You got a few months to go, and just play it safe, man. There's no reason to hurt your ace more than he is. Like, just piggybacking off what Tyson said.
Even if they do start to lose a little bit of that lead in the first wild card spot, by the time they lose that lead, it'll be time for Judge to come back anyway. So there's really no point. Whether you start to lose the lead, whether you do lose the lead, or whether you continue to hold that lead on the 4 spot, that wild card spot, it doesn't matter because by the time Judge gets back, you've still got plenty of time to either hold your lead, regain the game or 2 maybe that you would have lost, or regain the lead back. And there's no way they're going to drop out of the 5 seed. They might swap with Seattle in that second place,
yeah.
But still, they're not going to drop out of the wild card race. There's just no way.
The only thing, too, is that we got to think 3 to 6 weeks. Today is the July 30th.
Yes.
So that would be the middle of August when he'd be back.
Right.
And we still got the rest of August
got a month and a half.
all of September. So that's it right there. They're not going to fall out of the wild card. I don't even see Seattle catching them because Seattle's Seattle.
They did nothing. We'll get to that, but they did nothing to make their team better, and Oakland did everything to make their team better, and we'll get to that later.
For sure.
But let's move on here real quick. We need to talk about Gary Sanchez. He's also on the DL with a right groin strain again. 66 games, 42 RBIs. This is another guy that the Yankees are losing. I mean, we've pretty much talked about their situation already, but how much worse does this make their situation that they're in?
Here's the thing. With me, Tyson's probably going to disagree with me on this, but I called his boy out a couple weeks ago for Bryce Harper, obviously, for not hustling the first base, and even on top of that, hustling the second base to avoid a double play when he had to stand up double. The reason why I put this on here is because Gary Sanchez did the same thing. I don't care if you got a right groin strain or not. What does that mean? You got a pulled muscle in your groin?
Yeah, you know where your groin's at,
Yeah,
right?
I know. But at the same time, if you're going
Tender area.
if you're going to tell Aaron Boone, your manager, that you can play and you're not going to hustle to first base,
Agreed.
then put yourself on the DL.
Yep.
Now, I understand this is the third time he's been on the DL, and he's probably going to get traded for that because he can't stay healthy. But if you're going to tell your manager and your skipper that you're good to go and you're not good to go, that's where I have an issue. So this season, he's got 42 RBIs. Last year, he had over 100 or over 80. He's in the high 80s, low 90s. He's batting 188 on the year. Ouch, man, ouch. 188 with a 283 on-base percentage, 416 slugging, and one of the lowest OPSs in the league with a 699. Now, let me keep this straight for you guys. A high OPS is 950 to 980. That's an extremely high OPS. Average is 850. He's below average by almost 200 points. So that telling you right there, something's going on. His body's not right. He's not healthy, and he can't stay healthy because he keeps wanting to go in. He goes in for 2 or 3 games, and he's out. He's on the 10-day DL again. He's missed almost 30 days of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So this time he needs to stay on the DL until he's fully 100% healthy because Gary Sanchez, as we saw last year, helped the New York Yankees to the playoffs. And not only that, he kind of performed with Bird in the playoffs as well. So he's one of the key pieces that they need to stay healthy because he's not a bad player. You know, he just has some mental lapses and lapses in judgment, in my opinion, on whether he's healthy or not.
Right, yeah. There's absolutely no reason that he should have told the skipper, the manager, that he was ready to go, especially if he's not going to hustle the first base. If you want to say you're ready to go, you better go out and prove it because he's trusting you with your own health there. But I'm kind of in that same boat. He should have just sat out. He should have put himself on the DL. He should have just taken a day off. He doesn't even have to go to the DL. You could just take a day or 2 off, sit in the clubhouse, hang out, give yourself a chance to rest. But it was absolutely stupid for Gary Sanchez to go out there and try and play. I understand he wants to play, but he's been out for almost half the games so far this season. And I bet that played into it a little bit. He wants to be on the field. He's sat out enough. He's getting tired of not being able to play. So I can definitely understand that. But at the same time, if you play when you're not healthy, it's going to keep you not healthy for a much longer time. So do yourself a favor and just sit down for a couple games. Go hang out on the DL for 10 days. Go do what you got to do to get healthy, and then you can come back and play a lot more.
This is one thing I want to mention about that is maybe this is a guy that wants to stay on the Yankees, you know, and you obviously can't trade a player when he's injured. So if he could say that he's healthy and then go out there and re-aggravate this injury or his groin or whatever's bothering him, I mean, eventually in the next couple days, they're going to have to keep him, whether they want to or not. Now,
That's true.
Whether that's something that I'm completely speculating, it's happened in other sports before. Mostly basketball and football is what I'm getting at here, but I definitely think it's plausible. Call me crazy, but if you're trying to win a title, the Yankees, I don't want to say that are favorites, but I think they definitely have a chance come postseason.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and move on here to Houston Astros stud Jose Altuve. He's on the DL now, 104 games at this point. He had 153 last year total, and he's got 407 plate appearances, 134 hits. Stats go on and on. Cale, what do you got on Jose?
This is a guy that missed 9 games last year in the regular season, and he's played 104 this year. The year before that, he's played how many? 162.
Mm-hmm.
He played every game last season, so I knew it was bound and determined to happen. I'm very upset. You know, Jose is a great guy. He's a character. He's fun to watch. He's one of my favorite players in the league. So it's bound and determined to happen when you play that many games in a year. Yeah, he's young, but at the same time, when you're young, you still aren't immune to getting hurt. He pulled a muscle in his shoulder or something, so hopefully he'll be back after a couple days of rest. They have today and tomorrow off, I believe, so they have 2 off days in a row, which helps. Which helps the DL list because he's only on the 10-day as opposed to the 15 or the 30. So, but as Gavin said, this season he's got 134 hits with 46 RBIs. That's Jose Altuve numbers. He's a leadoff guy. You got a leadoff guy, batting around 46, runs scored. That's saying something. He's one of the league leaders in the AL with 14 stolen bases, and if you ever watch Jose Altuve, you know he's a little ball of fire because he's fast. He's fun to watch. But as a leadoff hitter, he's batting .329, which is exactly what you want to see out of your one spot. And he's got an .853 OPS and it's .464 slugging as a leadoff hitter. Your slugging is basically, how many balls you hit and where in the outfield or whatever. But every single he's stretching the doubles. So that's helping his slugging a lot. I don't know. Jose Altuve, I can't say enough good things about him. They're going to miss him at second, but they got a couple guys on the bench that are younger that want a shot too, that can replace him on the field for 10 or 15 days. So they'll be all right. I just can't wait for Jose to get back.
Yeah, I don't think this is a huge problem for the Astros or Jose Altuve. The Astros are in clear lead of their division right now. It shouldn't be a big issue for either one of them. Jose Altuve, this is great for him. As Cale said, he played 162 games a year ago. He played 2 years ago. He played 153 last year, and he's already at 104 games this year. That's a lot of games played, especially for a middle infielder. Even though this guy's got great energy, he's crazy good, super fast and quick with everything he does. Sitting out a couple days probably isn't going to be bad for him. He's not going to get up to that 150, 160 games that he plays every year, but that's probably a good thing. Everybody needs a chance to rest, especially guys that play with this kind of energy. But it's not going to be bad for the Astros. Like we said, they're in clear lead of their division right now. And having your star sit out for a couple days, couple months before playoff time, that's never a bad thing. Get him some rest, get him back to top-notch healthy, and he'll be able to carry him back through the playoffs again.
Let's go ahead and move on to the guy that we've been talking about for over a month now. He got traded to the Dodgers a couple weeks ago. Manny Machado, since being traded, has played in 9 games for L.A., 39 at-bats, 3 RBIs, 11 strikeouts, batting .308. What do you guys think about Manny?
I'm sad that he went to the Hollywood. I'm really sad about that. But 9 games with 3 RBIs, his strikeout ratio is pretty high, in my opinion. 11 in 9 games. That's not like Manny. He's got pretty good plate discipline. So I think he's getting a little over-aggressive there. But he's made the web gems on ESPN since he's been in LA like 6 times. So, he's out there stunting. He's got the swag for sure. I'm really glad he got out of Baltimore. That's all I can say about him. But I'm just hung up on that 11 strikeouts that he's got. But he's still batting .308 in 9 games. Whether that goes up or down, I don't see it going down much. I don't think he'll go down into the 200s. I think he goes up to about 315, 320, which is what he bats every year. He's got an 875 OPS, which is right there on average in 9 games. I did not include any of his stats with Baltimore for the first half of the year. I only did the Dodgers because I just saw his name pop up and I wanted to see how he was doing with the Dodgers in 9 games. He's helping the Dodgers. Obviously, with Seager being hurt, he's better than Seager, that's for sure. I'm not a big Corey Seager fan, especially with a guy that has to have Tommy John surgery as a shortstop. Don't understand that. He must have pitched in high school or something. I'm just sad that he went to L.A., but at the same time, for Chicago fans in this room, that helps us out because we don't have that big contract, although we can't use him as a trade piece either. So I don't know. I'm good. I'm glad that Manny's, like I said, I'm glad that Manny's out of Baltimore, having a decent year so far. For the second half in L.A., he's going to get better as the season goes on now that he is on a playoff caliber team.
Real quick, I want to say Chicago didn't want him because, I'm hopping on Tyson's bandwagon. We want Bryce Harper next year.
A lot of guys want Bryce Harper, and I don't blame them.
We're pulling for that, but Tyson, what do you got on Manny Machado?
Well, I think he's played great since he's been in LA, especially going through this adjustment period. He came out and it looked like he didn't really need to adjust. I think the strikeouts has something to do swapping from AL to NL. He's gone against a little bit better competition, better pitching competition, not as friendly ballparks. So the 11 strikeouts is concerning, but I think that's part of that adjustment. Other than that, I think his stats look great. He's batting over 300, which is hard for a lot of guys in the NL. You'll see good guys in the NL have a 280, 290 year, 300 year, and he's over that already.
In 9 games.
In 9 games. And so that's subject to change, flux up and down. But like Cale said, the only concerning thing right now is that 11 strikeouts. He's either hitting the ball or he's striking out right now. So it'll be a little bit better to see him put a couple more balls on the ground, give himself a chance to get on base a little bit more, which a .413 on base percentage ain't bad at all. It's a pretty good on base percentage. So he's still getting on the bag even when he's not hitting the ball. But I'd like to see him bring the strikeouts down a little bit, but I think he'll have a good rest of the season.
I think that's an attestament to Cale saying about Machado's plate discipline. And I think the strikeouts come along with, like Tyson said, being in LA, having that pressure on you now to perform. It's a city of lights for a reason. You know, you have that pressure to perform with all those stars watching you. You got Magic Johnson showing up at every single game. He's wearing Kobe Bryant's old number, for crying out loud. So we know that he has that pressure on his shoulders now to perform.
Real quick, can I tell you something as a Cubs fan? You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Javi Baez.
Okay.
With these 11 strikeouts, like you said, he's either hitting the
always
ball
swinging.
or striking out. You know, his plate discipline, he's been in the league a lot longer than Javi. But his plate discipline's about the same. Like I said, he's got decent plate discipline. You can't argue that. But man, 11 strikeouts, that's like Javier Baez numbers because he's either hitting the ball onto the street, out of the park, or he's striking out right now. So I just want to throw that out there. He's kind of reminding me a little bit of an older Javi Baez.
I think it's a great segue with talking about Javi Baez and the Chicago Cubs. Speaking of Chi-Town, Cole Hamels reportedly was traded to the Chicago Cubs from the Texas Rangers. He's 5-9 for the Rangers this year, and I was talking about this before the show. I think those 5 wins for Texas is underrated because, let's be honest, the Rangers are absolutely terrible. So I think the Cubs are getting a great pitcher here, 4.72 ERA. What do you guys think about this acquisition for Chicago?
ERA is a little high, but those 5 games that he's won were an absolute struggle. That's what I like to see. Struggle fest for Cole Hamels. He's getting older, you know, as a pitcher. He's a little bit older than Lester. I think he's in his mid-30s. Lester's in his early 30s.
Did he come in 2004?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I will say this, though. The last time he saw the Cubs at any point in time, he threw a no-hitter against us. When was it, 2012?
2015 with the
2015.
Phillies. It was his last season with the Phillies.
And it was at Wrigley Field that he no-hit us.
Yep.
So you can't beat him, join him. Or in this case, you're going to beat him, join him too. Anyway, no, Cole Hamels coming to Chicago, that is a very big pickup for us. Yeah, it's not Chris Archer. Yes, it's not Jay Happ. It's not even Zach Britton out of the bullpen, but it's still a solid starter. You know, still an all-star, still a premier starter. I'm glad to see him get out of Texas. He's going to come up. He's going to get us a ring this year. I'm still 100% confident in the Cubs, even though we kind of had a struggled weekend, I should say, which Tyson's going to talk about here in a little while. But Cole Hamels, great pickup, 1.373 whip. That's what I like to see, keeping that whip nice and low. All these advanced stats, for those of you who don't know, a little hard to explain. I could sit here all day and trying to explain it. 114.1 innings pitched. It's not bad in a 5-9 record. So he can go long innings. He can go 7+, which is what the Cubs need.
Let me say this real quick as a Blue Jays fan. I want to say that I'm glad that I don't have to see Hamels anymore in those Blue Jays Rangers series. We know that if you ever watched the Blue Jays and Rangers in the AL playoffs, you know all about that. Batista, Odor, a couple years ago. But yeah, I'm glad that the Jays will not have to see Hamels again. We'll have to see him in Chicago now, but I'm happy that the Cubs are able to acquire him.
Like I said earlier, the Cubs need all the help they can get because our starters are only averaging 5 innings. That's not good. We cannot mount a playoff run on our starters averaging 5 innings.
Well, that and the pitching all year, I mean, that's been the one Achilles heel of the Cubs since we've been talking about him for the past 2.5 months.
Right.
Yeah, I think this Cole Hamels pickup was huge. Yeah, he does have that 4.72 ERA. That's a scary number. You know what's even scarier, though, is in the month of July, his ERA was like 12.43.
Ouch.
That being said, there's not really anywhere else to go but better from that. He'll tell you, he had an awful month of July. He also played for the Texas Rangers, who are one of the worst teams in baseball this year, by far. God-awful. So the fact that he got 5 wins, even though he had 9 losses, he has a losing record on the year by a lot. The fact that he got 5 wins with the Rangers is saying something because they didn't help him out with any runs. They didn't help him out with any defense. There's nothing good going on in Texas right now. So I'm really happy Hamels got out of Texas. This is a guy in 2008 with the Phillies. He won a World Series.
Yep.
He won a World Series MVP.
Yep.
He won a regular season MVP, I believe, as well that same year.
And he was in contention with the Cy Young Award, too.
Yeah. This is a guy, he's proven himself. He's a veteran, savvy pitcher. He's got good stuff. He's still got good velocity on everything. Dude can absolutely pitch. So, and it's a guy, like Cale said, can go 7, 6, 7 innings every start. No questions asked. And that's exactly what the Cubs need.
I want to say something real quick. Hamels I know this is probably a strange comparison, but I think Tyson will see where I'm coming from. Hamels reminds me a lot of Brett Favre in the sense that when Brett Favre went to the Super Bowl with the Packers in, I think, was it 98 or 99, and he won his first chip. And then by the time he got to Minnesota, he had the chance to go get another one and made it to the NFC Championship game. And in between was a lot of disappointment, heartbreak, questioning retirement, questioning his ability to play the quarterback position anymore. I think Hamels is a guy that when he went to Texas, he had a couple good years. Now he's been struggling with disappointment and mediocrity. And now that he has a chance to go to a World Series contender and right now the best team in the National League, if you have a mediocre pitcher who's been great in the past, I think that will elevate him to better play come the back half of the season.
Well, and you can see it in their in the clubhouse, in the dugout. There's more smiles on the field. Yu Darvish has come out of the clubhouse and started hanging out in the dugout again. People respond to Cole Hamels. Dude brings a certain energy, not an energy like Javi Baez, but he brings a good aura to the whole team. People respect this guy. People like this guy. He's easy to be around. You can see it just on the faces of all the players. They like that this guy is here. They are excited to play with Cole Hamels, and they all believe in this guy. They believe that he can take them to a new elevated height.
I can say this as a Jays fan and seeing Hamels beat the hell out of my team for a couple years and in the playoffs, I still have respect for him because of what he's able to do and what he has done.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Tyson said. 2016, who do we have in that dugout that helped us win the World Series? David Ross. Cole Hamels is our new David Ross.
Grandpa.
That's what we needed. We needed a veteran leader. You know, John Lester, yes, veteran leader. Is he a David Ross caliber leader? Absolutely not. So now that we have another David Ross type figure, and as you said, yes, he's brought Yu Darvish out of the clubhouse into the dugout. You know, he's out there supporting the team and everything he's doing. That is what the Cubs need. They need a leader because, believe it or not, these guys are still young, man. You know, they just need somebody out there. They've done it. They've won the big show. They've done everything they possibly can do. Now they've got all this pressure on them from Cubs fans and everybody else. Now they've got a leader who can hopefully propel them even farther just to keep them in check.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here, guys. Tyson, I need to get to you because I know Cale was a little heated about this the past few days, and we've been talking about it. But the Cubs really struggled this weekend. They had a rough one against the St. Louis Cardinals. Just go ahead and give me your thoughts on their series with St. Louis and how the Cubs can bounce back from this one.
Before I get to the series with St. Louis, they lost that series with St. Louis 1-2. I want to go back to the very start of the weekend, Thursday, the game they played against the Diamondbacks. This is, if you had not watched the Cubs all season, this is the game that would basically describe their season. They were down 6-1, came back and won 7-6. Starting pitching, awful. Gave up 6 runs in the first 2 innings or something like that. Played well throughout the rest of it, but they struggled. Couldn't put runs on the board until it finally mattered. And the Cubs came out and they just started hitting bombs, getting guys on the bag. And then come the 9th inning, David Bodie, backup third baseman Chris Bryant, hits a shot. And then Anthony Rizzo finished it off, walk-off home run that didn't even hit the ground. It's still flying.
Yes.
Absolutely insane. One of my favorite games I've watched all year. Come from behind, but that shows what the Cubs have done all year. Bad starting pitching. Hitting takes a minute to warm up. But the second we get that bullpen in there, get some energy, things liven up. We shut down the other team, and we start hitting like monsters.
Real quick, I want to say I have watched maybe a dozen baseball games all year long. And I watched that game on Thursday night, and that, like you said, was the most exciting game that I've seen this season.
Yeah, absolutely. But since then, they lost 2 of 3 to the Cardinals. They lost 5-2, and they lost 6-2 before winning the last game of the series 5-2. It was a little bit of a rough series, but I don't think I'm not worried about the Cubs yet. I don't think this was the Cubs struggling issue. Yeah, it was. Starting pitching was bad again throughout the series. The only time we got good starting pitching so far this year was Kyle Hendricks yesterday, on the game on Sunday. He won 5-2. Kyle Hendricks, this is the second time all season he's gone 7 innings. Second time out of almost 20 starts. So the fact that he finally showed up, especially in a game where we were already down 2 in the series, it's looking good for Kyle Hendricks. He looks like the Kyle Hendricks of last year instead of the Kyle Hendricks of this year. Besides that, starting pitching was not very good. Q in Game 2 led up 5 before they pulled him, something like that. And in Game 1, it's more of the same. And Mike Montgomery lost in Game 1. That being said, I still don't think this was the Cubs struggling, more or less. I think this had a lot to do with the Cardinals. The Cardinals haven't done the typical Cardinals over the last couple of years in the second half of the season. The Cardinals pulled their full AAA starting rotation and brought it up to the bullpen. Everything that they had struggles with, they just fixed. Their starting pitching's been decent all year, but their bullpen has been awful. And they said, we see that. We are going to pull everybody, all our starters from AAA, and bring them up and see what they can do. And you can see that it's worked. They have shut down teams in the second half of games. They are not letting opponents score very many runs. The reason the Cubs scored 5 yesterday on Sunday was because we hit it off the starter still. So the fact that this wasn't the Cubs struggling, more or less, it was, don't get me wrong, they still struggled. They should have been hitting off of these guys. But this was the Cardinals doing really well for themselves. And their guys came up and hit. Yachty even had some hits. Matt Carpenter, he played well like always. So this was not so much bad on the Cubs, but it was really good on the Cardinals. Cubs are still 5-5 in their last 10. That's not awful. It's not good. It's average, exactly what 5-5 sounds like. But they played Arizona and they played the Cardinals for their last 3 series. So those are teams we're always competitive with. So I'm not super worried about the Cubs. I am a little bit worried about the Cardinals because they are starting to look scary a little bit. But Cubs had a decent weekend. The St. Louis had a good weekend. That being said, St. Louis is still 8 games back and in 4th place in the division.
I'm going to say 2 things about this Cubs weekend. So what I'm going to say, number 1, Albert Almore's got to stop batting second. They fixed his launch angle, so he is elevating the ball more. They just need to fix his power. He doesn't have quite the power to get the ball out of the fence yet. Over the fence, out of the fence. I don't know what that means. If anybody knows what that means, let me know. But over the fence. But Albert Almore batting second this year is only batting 188. Albert Almore batting first, or 5 through 7, batting 319. That tells you right there that Joe Madden's got to get him out of that second place spot. You know, I'm tired of Joe Madden. Honestly, I'm getting sick of him messing with this rotation. You know, what's working is working. Keep the baseball stigma. I know you want to, vamp it up. It's a long season. Bring the heat, bring the vibe, spice it up with Matt Carpenter and his salsa, what he's doing. Speaking of, if that salsa's doing him that well, he needs to send some of that Chicago's way. But that's a whole funny story. If you guys don't know, look into that. But anyway, Almore's got to stop batting second. That's a big beef of mine. And the second thing that I'm going to talk about that I can't stand, it's a good thing, but I can't stand it, is that the Cubs have 32, now 33 come from behind wins with what happened on Thursday. They're leading the majors. I cannot stand the comeback Cubbies. That gives me a heart attack. I'm sitting there watching the game. Okay, it was 1 point on Thursday. It was 7-1. And then it started to become 7-2. Then all of a sudden it was 7-6, and Anthony Rizzo decided he was going to end it. Anthony Rizzo's heating up. That's what the Cubs need. But I'm tired of watching these come from behind wins. I want to get ahead and assert some dominance. That's just me. I'm going old school baseball.
As far as the rest of the NL Central goes, almost everybody had a good weekend. The Reds won 3-4 against the Phillies. The Reds are 13.5 games back out of first place in the NL Central. They beat 3-4 against the Phillies, who are very close to leading that NL East. Actually, they are in the lead of the NL East by a game and a half over Atlanta. So the fact that the Reds, the last team in the Central, can take 3-4, that's just showing they show up when they want to this year. They had a good weekend against a good team. Milwaukee also took 3-4 against the Giants. So they had a good weekend as well, starting on Thursday. Put up a lot of runs over those 4 games with the Giants. And kept the Giants to scoring almost nothing. So the Brewers' pitching was really good this weekend, except for the game that they lost. They gave up 8 runs. Other than that, that's what scared us, is the starting pitching for the Brewers. So the fact that they can only give up 1 run in 2 of those 4 games, they had a decent weekend. And the Pirates, just as we've seen over the last several weeks here, the Pirates keeping up the streak. playing really well over the weekend again. Not as well as we would have liked. They lost 2 of 4 against the Mets.
Which that was out of nowhere. I definitely thought it would have been 3-1 or a clean sweep.
Baseball boys.
Yeah.
For the Pirates, for a team that's been playing so well, to lose 2 to the Mets and give up 12 runs against the Mets,
And then having to play the Cubs directly after.
Yeah, and then they got the Cubs. Yeah, exactly. So they had a decent weekend. Still won 2 games, 2 of 4. But it was against the Mets, so that might be a little room for worry. But over the last 2 weeks, over the last 19 games, they've lost 4, including those 2. So don't worry too much. They do have the Cubs coming up. That might put a little bit of a damper. We'll have to see how that series plays out. But other than that,
if you can split that series with Chicago, I think if you're a Pirates fan, you're still in good shape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, you are.
Absolutely.
Because the Chicago Cubs are the best team in the NL.
Right, and we know that the Cubs struggle with inside division play.
Right.
So I think if you're Pirates, even though the Cubs have the best, they are the best team in the National League. You still have a chance because of how the Cubs have played against their division rivals throughout the season, and the fact that Pittsburgh is hot. I mean, 15-4 over their last 19, like you said, Tyson. Mm-hmm. So speaking of the Cubs, still let's one last thing about the Chicago Cubbies. A-Rod came out and talked about Yu Darvish on Sunday Night Baseball, and I know Cale had some choice words to say about this, and I'm going to go ahead and hear from him right now.
All right, so I'm going to read the direct quote from A-Rod. Tyson, I'm going to get your opinion on this because I want to hear yours because me and you, I think, kind of differ on this. All right, so Sunday night, Yu Darvish, we all know, has been on the DL. Basically, let's just say the entire season because even his first 2 months were bad.
Yep.
A-Rod stated that when you have a guy that signed an enormous contract and is sitting down and you walk in the training room and he's got 2 trainers working on him, you should be in Arizona somewhere getting treated. A guy to start a 6-year contract with 3 of the worst months that you can ever see, they won't say this publicly, but it's gotten so bad they've let him basically place and take control of his rehab, which is scary because they don't want to create anything that he can kind of push back against. He'll let the team know when he's ready, and let the team tell you that means okay, which will let me tell you what that means to a clubhouse. You lose respect quickly. I don't know how he worded that. That's a little funky. But Joe Madden responded with this Sunday night when a reporter told him. He said, I totally disagree with that. Everyone knows what's going on. We know there is an injury here and there. We support his recovery. Everybody in there knows, and everyone in the coach's room also knows. Throughout the organization, it's unfortunate that it was relayed this way, but it's not true. So, Tyson, we both know that Yu Darvish is signed a 6-year, $126 million contract. That's an insane amount of money for a guy who's had very, very below average, very subpar starts so far. What do you think? What's your opinion?
I have absolutely no problem with A-Rod calling out Yu Darvish. This is a guy, A-Rod, we saw play for almost our entire lives so far, besides the last couple of years when he finally retired and was out with it. I don't agree with everything A-Rod did, juicing, cheating. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't care for A-Rod very much. That being said, I think he still deserves some respect. Played in the league for a long time. Tons of home runs, even though a lot of that's questionable, whatever. A-Rod's still a guy that guys look up to and respect and played the game for a very long time. When he was hurt, when he was out, he let the trainers take care of him. He let the team doctors tell him what to do his own recovery, and then get back, and we saw him come back healthy and play well. I don't have. This is exactly everything we've been saying about Yu Darvish since we started this show, since the start of the year, since everybody started talking about baseball and how he got this contract. He's played below average, and he's been out for half the year. Why are we even paying this guy? That's exactly what A-Rod's saying. So I don't have any problem with his comments. I do like that Madden came out and backed Darvish up, but yes, there is an injury. We get that. It's nice for Darvish to know that he still has support from the team. That's very important. It's incredibly great that Joe Madden came out and said that. But it needed to be said. I think A-Rod put it out there. He put out what everybody's thinking. This is bad. It's got to get better. I think that's the main thing of what he's saying is some switch has got to flip, and it's got to flip soon. We can't keep having this. It's not helping anybody out. But I don't have a problem with A-Rod's comments.
The only problem I have with it is the fact of what he said. In this last part of the sentence, He said he'll let the team know when he's ready, which is, let me tell you what that means to a clubhouse. You lose respect quickly. A-Rod wouldn't go out there if he was hurt. A-Rod would let the team know when he was ready to go play ball. Mm-hmm. That is the only problem I have with the quote. Now, that being said, yes, Darvish, I don't even have any words for it because we beat that. We beat it like a dead horse. So, I mean, honestly, we can't say anything else. But this kind of sparked me a little bit just for the fact that A-Rod's saying this. A-Rod is a guy who cheated, a guy who juiced. I can't stand him. I don't care how much he's done for the sport of baseball. He cheated. He's a juicer just like Bonds, which I still feel like Hank Aaron still holds the home run record. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but that's just my opinion. But A-Rod's saying that, he'll let you know when he's ready. True. Great virtue. Let your player know when you're ready when you're playing him $126 million. And that being said, that he's going to lose a lot of respect in the clubhouse quickly. BS, man. That ain't going to happen because A-Rod would not go out on the field if he was hurt.
Well, and we were talking about this beforehand, and I had compared it similar to the Kawhi Leonard situation with the San Antonio Spurs when he had his injury, and the team doctor said that he was good to go, and the player, Kawhi, said he was not good to go. This is a very similar situation, if not the exact same situation. When Darvish says he's good to go, he'll be good to go. It doesn't matter what your team doctors say. It doesn't matter if he gets a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinion. I don't care. We're not inside the minds of players, and we never will be, or at least not in this lifetime, I don't imagine. When that player says that they're hurt, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are not able to play the sport at the best of their ability, and when they're not, they're not. You have to let them recover, and when they're ready, they'll come back to you. So I see where both of you are coming from. I'm a little bit in Cale's corner because I don't think that he's going to lose respect over this whatsoever. You have to, like I said, give him the benefit of the doubt. If he's hurt, he's hurt. If he can't play, he can't play. And when he can, he'll come back. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on here. We need to talk about the 2018 Hall of Fame inductees for the MLB. Let's go ahead and start off at the top here. And Chipper Jones. Cale, I know this was one of your favorite guys, if not your favorite guy. What do you think about him making it in the Hall?
Chipper Jones, I'm going to tell you right now, 1,623 RBIs, 8-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, 3-time MVP, 2-time Silver Slugger. Chipper Jones, one of the best third basemen ever played the game besides Schmidt that played for the Phillies back when our dads were kids. But Chipper got 97.2% of the vote. That tells you right there out of this class with Vlad Guerrero, Jim Thome, Trevor Hoffman, Edgar Martinez, Mike Mussina, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, and Kurt Schilling. Them two in there, you guys already know my opinion. Coming out of the steroid era, I don't need to beat that again. But anyway, Chipper Jones, my opinion, best Hall of Fame candidate of the 2018 class. Like I said, he had 2,726 hits in his career, over 1,600 RBIs, 468 home runs, with a 303 average. 8-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, 3-time MVP, 2-time Silver Slugger. He played from 1993 to 2012. That's 19 years? That's a good career. Chipper Jones, well-deserved. I'm glad he got in. Chipper Jones is my all-time probably favorite baseball player of anybody, any team.
This is the first year he's been eligible for the Hall of Fame, right?
Yep.
He's a first ballot Hall of Famer?
First ballot, and he got in. Won 97% of the vote.
That says a lot. That's really all there is to say about it. First year he's eligible, and he gets almost 98% of the voters to vote for him and get him in there. You can see the impact that this guy had. Chipper Jones was a phenomenal player from start to finish.
Let's move on here. Jim Thome. What do you guys think about him making it?
Jim Thome. The only other guy that I really cared about in this class, you could say Vlad Guerrero. I never really watched Vlad Guerrero play. I didn't know who he was, but I knew who Jim Thome was, and I knew who Chipper Jones was. Basically because Vlad Guerrero spent almost all of his career in L.A., and I didn't care about L.A. But Jim Thome, his career, 612 home runs, 13 walk-offs most all time. 612 home runs. He's up there with Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, and company. That tells you right there where he belongs. He's also from Peoria, Illinois. He was born in Peoria, if you guys didn't know that. 2,000 career hits, 276 average lifetime, 554 slugging, over 500 slugging percentage for Big Jim. 5-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger, and I think he won the MVP 2 or 3 times. So Jim Thome, another guy, he won 89.8% of the vote. I'm glad he got in. I love Big Jim. I always love watching his highlights and watching him just absolutely demolish balls.
Yeah, I think that slugging percentage says everything for Jim Thome. that's a really, really, really good season for any player, let alone a career. So we know this guy can absolutely just tear up in baseball. Great to see him get in the Hall as well.
All right, going down the list here, guys. Alan Trammell. Can't pronounce. He third guy on the list here to make the Hall of Fame.
Alan Trammell had a great career. These are all guys. We're getting to the guys now that we're watching when we grew up. Alan Trammell, I didn't hear much about him because he was also in the American League. He didn't have near as good as numbers as Tommy, Chipper, or Vlad did. So, still well-deserved. He's well-respected around the league. Great baseball mind. But, yeah, that's about all I got. I don't have any stats on the rest of the guys.
We got Vlad Guerrero. We already mentioned him.
Vlad Guerrero.
His son playing for the Jays. I'm very excited to see how he performs next year.
Supposed to be better than his dad.
Absolutely. And then finishing off with Trevor Hoffman and Jack Morris.
Jack Morris, great pitcher. Trevor Hoffman, great middle reliever, great closer. They both played for the Indians at one point. Trevor Hoffman, I think he pitched a lot for Seattle, and Jack Morris, I think he pitched a lot for, I want to say, Atlanta in the 90s. But don't quote me on that because, like I said, I would have been in 96. I was born. So we're getting into the 90s. But yeah, great Hall of Fame class. In my opinion, you got Jim Thome and Chipper leading it. I understand Vlad Guerrero's up there, but Jim Thome and Chipper lead the class of 2018.
Absolutely. There is your 2018 MLB Hall of Fame inductees. Now we need to finish off today's episode with, of course, MLB standings, and then we're going to get off into our individual playoff predictions for, when is the playoff? September, correct?
Starts in October.
Yeah. So end of the season, September. We'll go ahead and get into that. We need to talk about the two hottest teams in baseball right now, Colorado Rockies and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Tyson, let me start with you. Who do you like more if we have two National League teams here? Both came out of the All-Star break, and they're both hot. We already talked about Pittsburgh briefly, and let's go ahead and move on to Colorado and which one you think has a better shot at making it.
As of right now, I still have to give it to Colorado. Pittsburgh is 7 games back in their division. They started so slow to the year. They've come on super strong since then, but Colorado's been hot, and they stayed hot throughout the whole season. And they're incredibly hot right now, 8-2 in their last 10. So the edge over Colorado and Pittsburgh, I still have to give it to Colorado, especially considering they're only a game back in their division, not 7. So they honestly might step up, sneak in past L.A., and take the division lead, their division lead. Colorado's been red hot. They've had crazy wins over the last 10 games, 8-2. They're playing extremely well. We'll see. I might have a different opinion after this upcoming couple days. They go to St. Louis to play the Cardinals, who we already talked about, swapped their whole rotation, bullpen, everything. So I'm very curious to see how they play against St. Louis in St. Louis. But right now, I still have to give that edge to Colorado.
I'm giving it to somebody completely different. Atlanta. I think the Braves are going to come back. They're only a game and a half out of the wild card. Do not count them Atlanta Braves out. Just like the 1990s, they're going to want to make a run. Personally, they got more depth than Pittsburgh and Colorado both. They just had a little bit tougher schedule the last couple weeks than Pittsburgh and Colorado. Now, that's not true for these next couple because Colorado's got some pretty tough games coming up, and so does Pittsburgh with Chicago. So do not count Atlanta out. I feel like Atlanta is going to sneak back up there, and I do see them taking that second wild card spot from Arizona.
So let's get into it real quick. As it stands right now, we'll go ahead and start with the American League because I know Cale's just the biggest fan. We got Boston leading the AL East, Cleveland leading the NL Central, and Houston leading the West, with New York in the 4 spot and Seattle 2 games up on Oakland for the 5. Is there a chance now, Cale, you've been talking about the A's for the past week and a half. Are you big on the A's taking Seattle out of that 5th spot and then making the playoffs?
Absolutely. I am more than confident with the way Seattle's been playing. Oakland's going to come up there. They're hot. They're a bunch of dogs. They like playing ball, and they're ready to go. They're a playoff caliber team as of right now. Like I told you guys about 20 minutes ago, whoever gets hot in the postseason and going up into the postseason, that's scary because they are going to make a run. And yes, I have a feeling it is going to be the New York Yankees and the Oakland Athletics in the NL or AL wild card. Excuse me. I just feel like they're going to get hot and keep staying hot.
Let me say this about the Athletics: is they did exactly what I thought the Mariners would do, and the Mariners failed to do it. Seattle needed to address their pitching, and Oakland went out and did exactly that, and I think that is propelled them into the wild card discussion. Maybe even, well, not even maybe even. I don't think that they'll catch the New York Yankees being 6 games back, but they're definitely going to, I agree with you, Cale, they're going to play them in the wild card game, and anything can happen in a 1-game series.
They're only 2 back from Seattle right now out of the wild card.
Absolutely. Anything can happen in a 1-game series, and I think that's going to be one of the most interesting things come October that we talk about when we make our playoff predictions going into it. Tyson, give me your thoughts on the A's right now.
The A's, as we've been talking the last several weeks now, are still hot. They're 6-4 in their last 10. Not as good as they previously had been, 7-3, 8-2, but they're still above 500 in their last 10. They're still playing really good. They've got a much better point differential than Seattle, especially over the last few games. Oakland is plus 33 in the run differentials, where Seattle's still in the negatives. So the fact that Seattle is in the negative run differential and still in that wild card spot still blows my mind. So I see the A's still keep heating up, and I would still really like to see Seattle in the playoffs. I think they pose a better threat against these top-tier teams. But I think the A's have a really good shot of taking out Seattle for that second spot. But I don't think they stand as good of a chance against some of the top teams in the AL.
All right, let's move on to the National League. The Phillies are leading in the East Division, and then, of course, we have the Chicago Cubs, overall best record in the National League, leading the Central Division, 1.5 games up on the Milwaukee Brewers. And then in the West, we have a really tight race between the LA Dodgers, Arizona Diamondbacks, and Colorado Rockies, with a half game separating each one of them, with the Dodgers in first place. With that said, Arizona's got the first wild card spot, and then Milwaukee has the second one right now, or excuse me, flip-flop that. With that said, I mean, like we've been talking about, the Colorado Rockies have a shot. Cale said that the Braves have a shot. I would even say that the Pittsburgh Pirates at this point, as a dark horse team, probably have a shot to make it if they can keep this hot streak going. Man, who do you guys have making those 2 wild card spots out of those 4 or 5 teams?
For the National League, I got a dead lock. Lock it up. If you're going to bet on it, bet on them. You can hear it right now from me. Your first wild card spot is going to be your Milwaukee Brewers. Your second wild card spot is going to be your Atlanta Braves. That's who it's going to be, the wild card. Winning it outright, honestly, LA has got the NL West. Nobody's going to catch them because they're going to heat up, especially now with Machado. The D-backs, I feel like they're too strong for Colorado. And I also feel like Atlanta's too strong for Arizona. So therefore, I've got Milwaukee and the Braves for the wild card. But the Cubs, obviously, they're going to win that division. I'm pretty confident in that. Nothing's going to change my confidence with the Cubs winning the NL Central.
I see for the wild card spot, I've actually got both teams in each spot dropping out right now. Milwaukee, as we've talked about, is famous for losing steam in the second half. I see Milwaukee dropping. I don't think they'll lose out on the wild card spot by much, but I think Colorado stays hot. I think they end up claiming that number 1 spot. Arizona, not that I've given up on Arizona, but Colorado has definitely looked better out of the 2 of them. I see Colorado moving above Arizona, and I see Milwaukee dropping. So I'll take Colorado at the 1 spot for the wild card, and I think Pittsburgh is just too far gone at this point. So I'm taking Atlanta for the 2nd spot. So I got Colorado and Atlanta, who are in 3rd and 4th for the wild card race right now, moving up to 1st and 2nd.
That's a solid pick right there.
All right, so let's just go ahead and cap it off here. Let's just go 1 through 5, starting in the AL. Cale, I want to get you first. Who do you have 1 seed AL going through the 5?
All right, 1 seed, I've got Boston. Obviously, best team in baseball. 2 seed, I've got Houston. Then I'm going to go ahead and cap that off with Cleveland. Obviously, Cleveland's going to have 3 because they got the better record. Then I'm going to go with the Yankees as their 4. They're going to be a sleeper. That's going to be my playoffs. The Yankees are going to win the wild card, and they're going to be in there. 1 through 5. The 5th pick, obviously, is Oakland. I've been raving about them all season. If they can beat the Yankees, then I'm all for it. But I just don't feel like they can. They got enough steam to get to the wild card game. They just don't have enough steam to beat the Yankees. And if they beat the Yankees somehow, they sure won't beat the Stros or Cleveland, because they've lost to both of them teams, a considerable amount of times this season.
I'm actually going to take that same lineup. Boston's our clear number 1. The Stros are our clear number 2. Cleveland gets the number 3 just because they're winning their division, even though they deserve the 5. And then I'll take New York at 4 because they're second in the AL right now. The only problem is they're behind Boston. So I'll take New York at the 4, and I'll take Oakland over Seattle coming back and taking that 5 spot. Now, that being said, like Cale said, I don't see the A's standing a chance against the Yankees, the Stros, even the Red Sox for sure. But I see them sneaking in that spot.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and second. I have the exact same lineup: Boston, Houston, Cleveland, New York Yankees, Oakland A's. If I do, however, think that if Oakland can beat New York, I feel like that. I know it's one game, but that's going to speak to what Oakland's been doing all season long, and the fact that the next series is only 5 games. Anything can happen in a 5-game series. So, I mean, even if they have to go up against Boston, I know they're the best team in baseball, but like Cale said, when a team's hot, they're hot. Anything can happen, and I think that would be a very interesting series.
And that is a for sure. If Oakland beats the New York Yankees in that wild card game, they will have Boston in the DS.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's move over to the National League, Cale. Let me get your 1 through 5 predictions for the end of the season.
Number 1, your Chicago Cubbies. Number 2, Philadelphia. Number 3, LA. 4, I'm going to go ahead and take Milwaukee. I'm going to take Atlanta at 5.
Okay, I'll take the Cubs still at number 1. I'm actually going to take LA, the Dodgers at number 2. I'll take Philly winning their division, and then I already said I got Colorado and Atlanta at the 4 and 5 for the wild card race.
I think we all have different predictions for the National League. I have the Cubs on top. I think that's all something we can all agree on.
Yep.
Number 2, I have the LA Dodgers. Number 3, the Philadelphia Phillies. Number 4, I have the Milwaukee Brewers, and at number 5, I have the Colorado Rockies making it in. Although I will say, I will not be surprised, and you can hear it from me, a guy that doesn't watch baseball, I will not be surprised if the Pittsburgh Pirates are able to claim that 5 seed. So, with that said, I mean, we have our playoff predictions here. I know it's early, but we got to talk about the World Series. Who do you guys have facing off AL, NL, claiming the chip?
I'm going to be a realist. I want to say Chicago in 7. Against Boston. Boston's my AL World Series contender. I think they're going to beat Houston in the CS. I just think that Boston's a lot stronger than Houston this season. But I'm going to have, as a fan, Cubs in 7 against Boston. But in the real world, I'm going to have Boston in 5 against the LA Dodgers.
Okay. As a fan, I was going to say Cubs in 6 or 7 as well. As a realist, I was going to say Boston in 6 against the Cubs. I'll still take the Cubs. I think we've got a good shot against LA, especially with Cole Hamels.
Yeah, that helps.
Because that was where we struggled last year against LA, was pitching. And not putting up enough runs, which we've got the runs figured out this year. Pitching was our problem. So with Hamels, I think that helps that a little bit. But I'm still going to take the Cubs, and Boston is my clear favorite in the AL. We've seen it all year. They're the number 1 team in baseball. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Nobody's going to catch them.
And believe me, I wholeheartedly think Boston has the best odds to win it, but I'm going to do this just to be different. I'm going to go ahead and say the Astros and the Cubs meet in the World Series, and the Astros are going to go ahead and repeat.
Okay. There is one other thing I want to point out. If you guys don't believe me and Cale and Gavin when we say the NL is way, way better than the AL, so much more competitive, in the wild card race, there are 2 teams in the AL. It goes Seattle is the 5th spot, Oakland is 2 games behind, and then after that, LA is the next closest team at 9 games behind the 5th seed. In the NL, there are 6 teams closer than 9. They are only 6 games or less out. Every team except for the Padres is 13 games or less in the NL. There are 3 teams 13 games or less in the AL of the second wild card spot. I think that should tell you enough right there. Every team in the NL still has a shot. There are 2 teams in the AL that still have a shot. The Angels and Oakland at claiming that 5th spot.
Let's be honest. The Angels they're not going to take that.
There's absolutely no way that's going to happen. But the NL is so much more competitive. That's why it's so much more fun to talk about the NL. The AL is so top heavy, and those top heavy teams are so good. But other than that, the NL is it's a much more tight race. It's a lot harder to pick. That's why I think a lot of us, we pick the Cubs when we go with predictions and whatnot, because that's what we know. That's what we know best. I think we just need to throw that out there. We are favorite towards the Cubs, but it's super competitive. It's anybody's ball game out in the NL.
Absolutely. And there's a reason that, like Tyson said, we root for the Cubs here. I know I am a Jays fan, but I'm from Illinois, so I got to root for Chicago when I can. I think that's why we all have Chicago in the World Series, unless it's Cale being a realist and picking the Dodgers. I still wouldn't pick LA, not once in my life. But with that said, I mean, we got two guys taking the Red Sox. I'm going to take the Astros. We'll see what happens, and who knows, predictions could change down the line. We'll come out with a new one once we get closer to the end of the season and the playoffs are starting and the wild card games are set. But with that said, we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Just needed to get away from football because we hadn't talked about it, and then we went 2 whole episodes talking about it. So definitely glad to be talking baseball. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that red subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit the bell icon next to it so you don't miss a beat. And, of course, always leave us some comments down below in the description. And tell us some other topics that you would like to hear and what you liked, what you didn't like. But with that said, I'm Gavin Campbell. That's Tyson Snyder. Cale Fleming. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.